Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to this session of the NRHA webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about how to sell lumber and building materials, and we have a panelist that's going to share some of his insights into what he's seen in his marketplace and what they are doing to overcome what some of the economic difficulties have thrown at the marketplace over the last year or two. As we begin, I'd like to just go over a few housekeeping measures. First off, my name is Dan Trottenchek. I am the editor of Hardware Retailing Magazine and the Vice President of Publishing for the North American Retail Hardware Association. Again, thank you all for joining us. If you at any point during the webinar today experience any technical difficulties, we would ask that you call the WebEx technical support line directly. That phone number is 866-229-3239, or if it's more convenient for you to email them, you could email them at support@webex.com. Throughout the course of the session, all of the attendees are muted on the phones. Hopefully you're able to hear us all right on the phones, but you would be muted. But that does not mean you cannot ask questions. In the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a small tab that says Q&A. And that's just like a box on any kind of chat page. You just enter any questions that you have in there and hit send, and we will receive the questions and respond to them throughout the course of the seminar. Without further ado, I would like to turn the seminar over to my associate editor, Jesse Carlton, who is going to lead the program through the first part and introduce you to our panelists. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dan, and good afternoon again. Welcome to NRHA's webinar series, and today's webinar on how to sell lumber and building materials. As Dan said, my name is Jesse Carlton. I'm an associate editor here at the Hardware Retailing Magazine and NRHA. And today we want to talk about how to sell lumber and building materials. More specifically, how can you boost your sales in this tough economic time? We want to talk about ways that we've seen through our research that retailers are responding to the changing market. And specifically, we want to talk with Tony Brookhouse. We want to welcome him this afternoon. You may remember Tony was our 2003 Young Retailer of the Year. He is also currently the COO of Koopman Lumber. Koopman has 3 stores in Massachusetts, in Whitensville, Grafton, and Uxbridge, and he's going to be sharing some of his thoughts a little later on. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
To get started, here's what you can expect throughout the rest of the next hour or so. We wanted to briefly look over the industry, take a step back and look at the larger lumber and building materials industry and see where the market has been heading and how that's affecting the marketplace, what are some of the trends that we're seeing in the market, and then get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about what are some of the keys to selling lumber in this climate and how you as a retailer can increase your sales. So to start out, let's look real briefly at some of the market pressures. It's no surprise that housing is not out of the woods yet. It's been a slow year with the building, and it's been that way for a while. However, analysts are saying it seems like we've hit the bottom, and we expect things to turn around maybe mid-next year. Some of that growth is going to start in the larger cities. You know, all the pent-up demand for housing, as well as moderate interest rates, as well as lower home prices, are all eventually going to mean that people are going to start buying homes again. And so the future does look optimistic, according to a lot of the people or a lot of the reports out there.
And let me chime in there really quickly, Jesse. This is Dan Trottenchek again. Is that every year Hardware Retailing Magazine and the North American Retail Hardware Association conduct something called our Market Measure Report. And this is where we look at a different variety of things that impact the home improvement industry overall, both on the lumber and building material side and on the under-roof sales side, hardware side. And according to all the data that we gather, now we go out there and we really literally send surveys to thousands of retailers asking them about the business climate. Last year was certainly a rough year by any measure for most everybody. The hardest hit group was certainly the lumber yards and the lumber and building material retailers. and a lot of that certainly tied to the drying up of remodeling projects and the housing market. But according to the statistics and kind of the models we run when we look at making kind of a predictive outlook for the market, we see that perhaps in the third and fourth quarter of this year there may be some slight returns on all fronts for the home improvement industry, and we might start seeing some of the sales come back into the industry. Now, of course, I caution with any kind of predictive outlook is that it's just that it is a prediction. But we do look at quite a few different numbers and read quite a few different reports and look at our own analysis to determine that. And we're pretty confident that the third and fourth quarter might start seeing some small returns to normalcy. But the real big, the brunt of the recovery is probably still the better part of 9 to 12 months away.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And and leading off on that, how that plays out in your own store, a lot of lumber retailers are seeing lower margins on commodities. Even if you're in a pocket of the country that seems to be somewhat isolated from, some of the dip in the housing market, you're still going to feel the effects of supply and demand. That lumber mills are competing more heavily. There's price wars, and that all in all, it means that commodities are getting lower margins. So most retailers are looking for other places to get their sales. Instead of selling the whole lumber package, there's a lot of maintenance and repair items. You might be selling to some remodelers or smaller project packages. Also, there are more consumers that are choosing to do projects themselves. So there's a lot more do-it-yourself traffic coming through instead of contractors. And that, of course, means that you're not getting those high volume sales. You're getting a lot of high maintenance customers in your store.
And that's another point to reflect on is that we just did complete a round of research with consumers asking them about their DIY habits, and we just also held a webinar yesterday talking about paint and sundry sales. And our panelist on that webinar yesterday really echoed that, is that they are, particularly even the panelist that was very pro and commercial contractor heavy in their paint sales traditionally, said that they're starting to see a lot more consumers come in because they're engaging in small projects. They still want to fix up their houses and homes. They still want to add on to it, maybe not to the degree they once could because they maybe can't pull the equity out of their homes or don't have the funds to do a large scale project. But one area that they're saving is by not necessarily going to a contractor or a remodeler to do it and taking on those projects themselves.
And when they do come and look for products, consumers still want price, a reasonable price, but they're still looking for quality. Those are two areas that they're not sacrificing, and that's something that I think we're seeing across the board as well. Also want to take a look back at, we want to look at some of the ways that retailers are responding to all these pressures. And as Dan mentioned earlier, we do our annual cost of doing business study. Want to look a little historically here, the past 3 years. If you look back at 2006 through 2008, which is the latest year we have, you'll notice that lumber yards, their gross margin is increasing. It's slowly creeping up to 30% in 2008. Now, we all know that commodities don't bring a big margin. So obviously that these retailers are getting their margin somewhere else, and we believe it's those under roof sales, they're trying to sell more of the whole project. So instead of just focusing on a big lumber package, they're trying to sell everything that goes with it. Maybe it could be as much something like plumbing fixtures. It could be custom doors. It could be something as simple as a few trash bags and a broom for job site cleanup. But focusing on those entire projects means that customers won't be going somewhere else to buy the other half of the project. And I think that's where retailers are finding they're increasing their margin.
Yeah, and just another note on that real quick. Could you roll back to that slide really quick there, Jess? Not only we get the opportunity both through NRHA and at Hardware Retailing to visit with literally hundreds of retailers of all stripes throughout the course of any given year. And so a lot of the information we talk about is anecdotal. It's stuff that we hear from the field, stuff that we see from the field, and listen to retailers and how they respond to the markets. But then we also have this more quantitative information that we get from the surveys we send out. And what's always nice when we look at these numbers is to see that the anecdotal things that we're seeing out in the marketplace are kind of followed up and make sense in the actual numbers that we see. And one thing that's important to look at here is if you look at the trends for lumber yards in terms of sales, obviously, there's no doubt you see the average sales per unit going down from 2006 pretty dramatically through to 2008. But what you also see is a change in the gross margins, and the 30 points on a gross margin is overall for the entire operation, and that's one of the higher gross margins we've seen from this sector in a long time. And that really kind of supports the fact that a lot of these lumber and building material dealers, as the large project sales have dried up, have really been trying to make their way by adding additional under roof products, by expanding areas, whether it be, as Jesse was indicating, whether it be paint or smaller projects with kind of the cabinets or bathroom vanities or plumbing fixtures, but they're looking for under roof sales, which traditionally obviously carry a little bit higher margin than your sticks and bricks. But and that's reflected in the numbers we see. Something else I wanted to point out here is that even in 2008, which was kind of the tipping point for the market, where the lumber yards and building material dealers really started getting hit hard by the economy, there was still a group that was able to turn a profit, albeit a modest profit. It was still able to turn a profit. The downside to it, in contrast to the numbers we saw from hardware stores and home centers, the lumber, which both hardware stores and home centers were able to maintain profitability on slightly softer sales in those sectors by cutting their expenses. That necessarily wasn't the case in lumber yards and the lumber dealers. If you look at total operating expenses, they went up. Now, some of that is certainly reflective of lower sales, because that percentage is represented as a percentage of sales. So as the sales go down, that percentage becomes higher. But what we really saw is that lumber yards in the beginning, even back to 2006, were already running at a pretty lean pace when it came to expenses. So there wasn't much they can jettison when it came to cutting their expenses to meet the kind of drop off in sales that a lot of these retailers saw.
Okay. Very good. So in terms of how retailers are responding, like we've just been talking, they're selling more of the whole project. We're seeing that they're also offering special orders, making more of an emphasis on, if you have consumers coming in, they're going to see the fancy doors or the fancy faucets and want to do some special orders. Also, specialty items, custom millwork and molding, as well as custom paneling. Those are items that can still draw high margins and can really position yourself as a destination and set yourself apart from some of the other lumber yards. A lot of retailers, including Koopman, I believe, in 2 other locations, have expanded into rental. This is another good way to capture the whole project, and like we were talking before, and also for consumers, if they're going to tackle a project, they probably don't have some of the tools that the pros may have. So expanding into rental is really a good way to drive traffic. And speaking of rental property is also a strong business. People who can't afford homes are renting, and property managers still have a lot of work to do in terms of updating and maintaining their property. So a lot of retailers are finding business within opportunities to sell to that customer.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that going back to some of these points here that Jesse's talking about is the real push, whether it's offering something like rental or expanding into rental, or offering additional categories under roof, or expanding into special order products. The successful retailers on the lumber building material side are really finding a way to be that one-stop shop. It kind of goes back to the old story about, if you go out hunting with someone and you get attacked by a bear, you don't have to run faster than the bear, you just have to run faster than the other guy. And that's kind of what we're seeing in this marketplace. We're being attacked by the economy, and the smart retailers, the good LBM dealers that are finding a way to still turn a profit and be successful, figured out, listen, I can't necessarily beat the economy, but I can beat the other guy in town, and I might not be able to grow my sales organically by getting more customers in my doors, but I can certainly grow my sales by being the preferred provider of choice. And that's where they're expanding into a lot of these things, to not send business away, to not just sell sticks and bricks and drywall and make the guy who wants to come in and buy drywall go somewhere else to buy his drywall tools, or the guy who wants to come in and buy lumber and materials for a project go somewhere else to buy the job site cleanup and a generator and things like that, but capturing those additional sales.
Dan and Jesse, could I contribute here a little bit on the rental?
Oh, absolutely, Tony, please.
I guess going back to what Jesse said, we have rental in 2 of our locations, and I couldn't agree more with you. We look for a goal of just turning that inventory one time. For example, to make it simple, if we have $100,000 worth of equipment, we'll look for a turn of renting that one time. But the ancillary benefits to that, the drill bits, the blades, the whatever else, the belts, the equipment that they need when they rent that is exponential. And that is what has helped us to guard some of our margin points in this awful economic cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful point.
Okay. Well, in terms of just a couple more things before we start talking with you, Tony, and in more depth, we want to look at 4 things that we found, and there are many more, but some of the key things that it takes to run an effective lumber yard. And one of the things that we're seeing is an outside sales team that's even more focused on getting out into the field. It's not a matter of just sitting back in the office and taking phone calls and taking orders anymore. Those aren't coming in as fast as they used to, and we're finding that lumberyard dealers need to get out in the field more, really give their outside sales team a refresher course on salesmanship, and try to develop closer ties to their customers.
Yeah, that's certainly a good point. Is that oftentimes just the idea of salesmanship, you concentrate a lot on product knowledge and knowing the material and merchandise in your store and knowing the programs, but the whole idea of salesmanship, whether it's with your yard staff, with your sales floor staff, or your outside sales staff, those are skills that need to be built up, and in this economy it can certainly make a big difference.
Absolutely. Another big thing is inventory, and making sure that inventory is honed in to exactly what it needs to be. Make sure everything's in stock. That's something I hear a lot. And then eliminate redundancies to make use of every bin that's there and every inventory dollar that you can, as well as those specialty items that will really set yourself apart. The other thing kind of touches on what Dan just talked about in salesmanship. Product knowledge is a big part of salesmanship, and this is not just the floor manager, but it's the cashier, it's the guy in the lumber yard, it's everyone who's on your staff. It's even more important for them to be trained in product knowledge, especially if there's going to be more do-it-yourself customers coming in who may need a little extra help walking through a project. And then finally, just keeping things clean. Again, if there's more consumers coming in, there's more eyes on the yard, and making sure the trash is cleaned up, all the lumber stacks are neat, and removing damaged products. These is just another little thing that goes a long way to making your sales more attractive to the customer.
Yeah, and it also goes a long way to standing out from the other competitors, and that's a fine looking yard right there, a fine looking area. But and that goes to having everything priced. I mean, you make on the inside of a store, you go to extra links to make sure all your products are priced so people can find it quickly. But a lot of times on the yard, people won't have the stuff priced, and I know there's different pricing for contractor pricing and so on, but you certainly don't want to alienate that consumer traffic that you might get, the guy that drives in that wants to see what you're charging for a 2x4x16 or whatever, and wants to be able to see it right there while he's in the drive-through area. So it's just those little things. Again, during a time like this, concentrating on the little things can make a big difference.
Exactly right. You also look at the way the big boxes are selling to the consumer with the prices, and see what they're doing, and realize that consumers are more likely to expect that when they come to a yard. So, well, Tony, I'd like to turn it over to you now, or get you talking, and want to hear some of your insights. If you could start off by telling us a little bit about Koopman Lumber and give us a sense of your size and your market, and then tell us about how you've responded to some of the changes. What do you see as some of the changes in the lumber market and how you've responded?
Well, thank you guys, and hello to everybody out there. This is we're in Massachusetts. We're about 45 miles outside of Boston. We're considered probably the second belt of the suburbs. In the height of everything, we were close to $50 million in size. Last year, we ended up around 37, 38 million. We have 4 locations, 3 hardware stores with drive-through lumber yards, which you've seen pictures of, and then we have a distribution center which sits on 8 acres. As Jesse was saying, we're big into outside salesmen, we're big into the lumber yards, and we're also big into the hardware stores. I think that the combination of those 3 and not just focusing on one totally has helped us remain profitable during this awful time. Now, not a ton of profit, but we did end up the year last year in the black, and I thank our team and everyone else. I'm the son-in-law. I'm one of the owners. My brother-in-law and I bought this business from my father-in-law, who I know Dan knows, 5 years ago. My wife works with us. She works 3 days a week as our CFO. We have 139 employees, and I guess that's a little bit about us. In this changing market, like I said before, we focused on the outside sales, the hardware sales, and some of those niches like rental and other things to try to protect our margins. We have 10 outside lumber salesmen. I am directly responsible for them. I have 5 inside sales support to back up those 10 people. We have a engineered lumber and estimating department of, used to be 5 people, now it's 3 people. I can't imagine that we would be adding more to that, but we still kept the department because of the importance that we felt. So those are some of the areas that we have, and Jesse, what other questions would you have?
Hey, Tony, why don't you talk a little bit about kind of what are some of the things you guys did as you saw the market declining to kind of respond to that and maintain profitability in your stores? What were, everybody kind of saw this huge wave coming and either started swimming or started trying to dive under the wave or whatever it is. What did you guys do?
I think some of it is, we really have always done this, but I think we did even a better job of really doing some account and customer analysis. As you know, Dan, I like a lot of analysis, and I would go through, and I became intimately aware with our top 100 customers. I would print out that list, or my assistant would print out that list for me every month on a month-to-date basis, and I would make sure that I would contact 20, 25 of those people every month personally. What are you doing? What's going on? What are you seeing? How are we doing for you? Et cetera, et cetera. That formed a bond. And I remember I sat in a lumber round table with an owner that he said, "Hey, I don't have time to do that." That was his response to me.
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't have time not to do that because of the importance of it." Because I said, how am I going to know what's going to go on a month down the road if I'm not in contact with our top customers? And subsequently, not that this isn't a I'm right, he's wrong, but that business sold. They were forced to sell in the last 24 months. And I think a large portion of it is because they lost touch with a lot of those customers, and that makes a customer vulnerable to somebody else. So like you said, Dan, I couldn't agree more. In some ways, in this recession, you don't have to be the absolute best. You just got to be better than the other people.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Some of the things that we've done is we've looked at our customers in that analysis, even on a customer-by-customer basis, to see what penetration are we getting from that customer. What areas do we have that we could sell more to? And I'll give you some examples to that. First of all, I think all of us in this downturn have realized that somebody that pays their bill is as good as gold. So, that's kind of a given that you have people that are prompt payers. I think that what we've done is we've focused on, I've made it mandatory in our company to have 72-hour credit returns. I think that, there's been so much disillusionment with the stock market and everything else that if you can just get your credits right, it's a company policy that we process those credits, pick them up from the time they're requested and process them and get them on people's accounts and email them what that credit has been within 72 hours. Sometimes lumber yards, building materials, they'll sit for weeks on credits. And just a little sign of, hey, we have this integrity, we want you to get your money back as soon as possible as we get our material back. I think that selling some different categories to people, we've concentrated on the whole envelope, the whole building envelope, whether it's an addition, a remod, a new construction. We look at the whole envelope as a sales package and then try to get as much of that pie as possible.
And obviously that involves under roof sales, it involves rental sales, just about every aspect of the store.
That's true, and I think that that's where we've done seminars on energy. We've done seminars with our engineered lumber department on how now as the building codes change, and Haiti is a perfect example of this. You can't watch the news without seeing how they refer back to the building codes and how poor they were in Haiti, and that led to a lot of the death that could have potentially been avoided. The building codes, the IRC codes, and all the building codes, even here in Massachusetts and across the nation, are changing at a breakneck pace. If you can stay on top of that and become a resource to your builders, they lean on you. And with that integrity, if you don't say, hey, this isn't, I'm not trying to sell you hardware or hangers or whatever else that you don't need, but I'm trying to keep you out of trouble because you're our customer and we watch your back and we want to be considered your educational resource. That adds over time to sales and loyalty. And with the changing of the building codes and the energy codes, we've seen some real bump ups with that. More and more builders. I remember 24 months ago, if you said to somebody, would you want to learn how to become an ENERGY STAR rated builder or remodeler? They would say, no, forget that. I don't need that. I got more business than I know what to do with. But now if you say, if you're not, that could be the difference between you getting the job and somebody else getting the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Jesse?
I want to talk about your typical customer. Tell me a little bit about the typical customer today. Do you think that the lumber customer has a different set of expectations than they did, say, a year ago?
I do on all fronts because, a lot of the big builders, the, track builders, those guys are gone. So a lot of, whether it is even an 8 to 10 house a year builders or a suitcase builder or a remodeler, they're doing more. I mean, I'm doing more, we're all doing more with fewer assets than we did before. So people seem to understand a little bit more of the one-stop shop. I'm your resource. I'm your educational center. I can help you with this entire project. And I think that that's where you get some economies in, so that when I talk about these energy seminars or when I talk about when we're selling more to different people, if I'm not selling anyone their roof shingles and, we're selling them everything else, I'll put together something to try to get that business from them because we know they pay their bills, we know what kind of person they are, and we try to get that. So I think that the contractor has seen some value in that, and they've started to change as well. They want to deal with fewer people because they just have less time.
Good. Can you talk just a little bit about your ratio? I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but the ratio of, say, contractors to do-it-yourself customers that are coming in. Have you seen that number jump in your store, or that ratio change over the past few years? It's
changed about 5%. At the height, we were 75-25 pro to homeowner. I think we're about 70-30 right now, the last time I checked. And we do have a lot of smaller remodelers and onesie, twosie, either additions or builders, and that's a lot. A lot of that big track building, or I'm blowing in a road and I'm going to put in 40 houses. That stuff's gone. So you need to have some of that too, and I think those are a lot of the places that are hurting the most. That that didn't have a little bit of that mix.
Tony, do you guys watch your transaction size? How has that changed in the last couple of years?
As a matter of fact, we do. It's funny you mention that because we made that an enormous focus from the end of last year to this year. We post it now in every store. We're trying to raise that by like $5, our average transaction size. And you think it's like, hey, $5, but I mean it adds up. It's similar to the would you like batteries with that? When you Toys R Us. I have 4 young children. I mean, I hear that all the time, and quite honestly, mostly I need batteries.
Yeah.
But we try to do the same thing with our cash registers, and as you guys alluded, Dan and Jesse earlier, with paint. There are, do you need a drop cloth with that project? Do you have all the brushes you need? Do you have any cleaner, any mineral spirits? Do you have the buckets you need? How about a bucket liner so that you don't have to throw the bucket out? All that stuff adds up, and we watch that, and we actually do post it in every store.
We had an interesting question in the session we had yesterday, Tony, when we were talking about paint. And again, one of the guys we were talking to, their business had probably been real close to yours, probably about 70% or so pro and about 30% DIY, and they've seen that change a little bit as well. And someone from the audience asked a very good question, and it was, as you're getting more DIY traffic in your store, typically they felt that would be a more hands-on, needy customer, if you will, and asked, how did that impact the cost of a sale? If your sales team is having to deal with more DIYers or more needy customers, did that have a dramatic impact on how much it costs to make that sale? What do you? I mean, 5% isn't that big of a change, but again, overall for your company, it probably does represent somewhat of a significant change. How would you respond to that? I mean, is it more troublesome and more difficult to deal with a DIY customer, or maybe it's not? Maybe the contractors are more difficult, and I just don't realize it.
Well, there's pros and cons, and I think that some of Jesse's graphs earlier on in your presentation were very that prove this out. There's only so much you can cut, and I think anyone listening that owns their own yard or is in management at their own yards know what I'm talking about. You cannot cut where there's nobody in paint and then you have somebody running over there. So actually some of the DIY stuff has helped us because cash flow wise, you get the money in the door right there, whether it's a credit card or whether they write a check. Generally with any pro, you're waiting 30 to 60 to 90 days depending on how large the account is and what their circumstances are. So once we cut to the bone, and once you're at we're in the bone, we realized that, look, we got to just get the sale from anyone we needed to. And I think all of us, if we're very honest and forthright with ourselves, we were all a little fat and happy. And we've gotten a lot hungrier and leaner about, look, I don't have any problem, running down the aisle to help you get the tack cloth and help you get this and that, because we've got the staff around, and we got to a level where we, like I said, eked out a profit last year, and now we are taking this entire year and just focusing on every sale we can by, like I said, transaction amounts, raising those by $5 is going to be an enormous key.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think so.
And you guys got to remember, even in paint, as you use that as an example, we do about $2.5 million in Benjamin Moore. We're one of the biggest dealers in the Northeast for Benjamin Moore paints, and we have Valspar and other lines in California. We have a huge paint presence, and we have an outside paint salesman, that has his own van. So, I mean, we're serious into paint, and we were serious in the pros. But when the DIY, do-it-yourselfers come in, we certainly pay them the respect that they deserve. And quite honestly, I think sometimes they like shopping where the pros shop because they feel like they're getting the information, they feel like they're getting the professional advice, and we appreciate them because, like I said to you in the practice session, the sales in the stores have paid for a lot of sins on the lumber end in this downturn.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's certainly a nice backup to have.
Well, in terms of the typical retailer then, and how someone who's looking for a way to make their business better, what do you think are, Tony, what do you think are some of the keys to selling lumber and building materials today? And you can maybe specifically talk about things like merchandising and outside sales and employee training and that kind of thing.
I think outside sales is key. Again, I was in a lumber roundtable over the years with many different people, and one guy I remember, he was very funny, out of Connecticut. He said, every time I want to hire an outside salesman, I take 2 aspirin and hope the feeling goes away. You can't be that way in today. As you guys said in your opening remarks, and I couldn't agree more, you have to go get every sale. You've got to go out and get it. And quite honestly, if you have the trucks, you have the inventory, and you have that, getting a good commission structure and growing an outside salesman or getting an outside salesman from another place, it is a good way to go. Now, you need to have somebody like myself. I take that on personally, and I meet those customers. I make sure that we continue to qualify them. We are very, very hands-on. You need to be hands-on because that accounts receivable end needs to be kept in check. But people, again, going back to the time factor, people want people to be out at their job sites. They want to know that you're feeling the same pain that they're feeling. They've got to have a pickup truck. They've got to be able to be willing to get their hands dirty, go out on the job site, take an order. They want to see that because everybody wants to know everybody else is feeling the pain too.
Tony, you guys do a couple things that are a little bit unique. One, if you don't mind, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about how you do, how your distribution center fits into your overall operation, and then I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit. We had a question come in from the audience, which kind of dovetails with what you guys do at the distribution center. But on specialty items, what would you consider kind of an acceptable lead time on getting those items for customers?
Acceptable. Special order, you mean like a window special order, or like, hey, we don't carry cedar boards, so we're special ordering those in, or mahogany or something?
Well, I guess maybe both. The question just says, on specialty items, what would you consider an acceptable lead time?
I think we try to ask for, if it's something we stock, we try to get our distribution center. Let me back up for you. Our distribution center, 5 years ago, we decided to build that, and I think, Dan, you came out and took a look at it.
Yeah.
We needed to show the contractors that we were serious in the business. We consolidated all of our trucks into that location. We bought a location out of the way. There's no customers that go there. There's just, barbed wire fence around the 8 acres. There's about 60,000 square feet of building for plywood. There's enormous racks with drive-through for our trucks. We run it from 6 in the morning until 3:30. Like I said, there's no customers that come there. It's a churn and burn. We receive all of our special orders there, kitchen cabinets, windows, millwork, and we ship out of there. That really showed the customers, thank goodness we did it 5 years ago, but that showed the customers that we were really serious about the professional builder. Then the outside sales force. I started with 4 guys. I'm up to 10 guys. Now, when stock lumber imploded, as I said to you guys before, that really helped us out. I was able to pick up a couple good guys from there. But it's very similar to a team, to either a professional basketball team, baseball team, whatever you want to equate it to. When you have a good team, people want to be on that team. So, my 4 guys that I started with were doing well. 2 guys were store managers that I kind of grew from the interior. 2 guys I saw some talent in. Then all of a sudden you add somebody else, and in 5 years, now we have 10 outside lumber salesmen. The least of those producers will produce this year $1.8, $1.9 million each. The highest one, my highest outside lumber salesman last year, he produced $4.51. So $4.5 million is what he produced in an awful economy at a good margin. But it was a good lumber margin, not a hardware margin.
Yeah.
So I think that, that mix, again, you need to think of it as a team. You know, you don't dabble in outside sales. You need to support them with the interior support. I think technology, as you're kind of saying, with our distribution center, we electronically send orders. I've gone the full gamut on technology. Laptops, all my outside sales guys have laptops. Now with smartphones the way they are, most of my outside guys are now on Droids. You can receive your orders. You can be at a job site with a proper smartphone and see electronically when, to the person in the seminar's question, if a 10-door order comes in, they'll get an electronic notification. Attached with that electronic notification will be the packing slip. So the person can be on the job site, and Joe Builder, Remodeler, whoever will say, hey, can you check on my order for the Smith job? Sure. Oh, by the way, I got an email on that yesterday. It's in, but there's 2 doors that are back ordered, and here's the packing slip. So it's the 2668 right-hand door that's back ordered. I mean, it's just gotten that good. And information is key because it shows that you're in control of your operation, and it shows that you know what you're doing, which commands more respect and loyalty. And with that respect comes loyalty. And at the same time, I use it as much for marketing as anything else. I said, hey, you know, does your current lumberyard, and this goes back to your overall point, you need to be just better than the other guy. Hey, does your lumberyard do your credits in 72 hours guaranteed? No. Does your lumberyard equip their outside salesmen with, you know, smartphones so that if you're out on the job site and you want to know how many doors are in the Smith job and when that order's coming in, you'll know within 30 seconds? No. Well, give us a shot. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So again, it all goes back to as we've all talked about is being the kind of best in class provider in your trading area.
Yeah.
Also, Tony, something you guys that do that's for a while that's really kind of morphed into something bigger, certainly bigger than when you started, was some of your promotional events. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your promotional events, but also talk to us a little bit about your strategy when it comes to marketing, promotions, and advertising overall, and how that's been impacted by the economy and changes you've made in your business.
I guess twofold. The picture that you're showing right now is our contractor clam bake. I mean, being in New England, lobsters are candy for us. So we do and have done 5 or 6 years contractor clam bake. I'll take our distribution center, that big warehouse, and I'll clean it all out. And I set up booths very similar to a hardware show. And I invite all of our key vendors, and I will allow them, I tell them what they're going to bring for items, you know, stuff that we want to promote, items that we sell, like Advantech plywood, Zip Wall, Zip Roof, Tyvek, all that. And I allow them, but they have to have it pre-approved by us, one new product. They bring one new product so that they really bring the best of the best. You don't want a vendor sitting there with 10 new products, and you want them to really say, this is the best, and they strive to do that. I sell the booth space. The event costs us around $60,000, and I sell the booth space to recoup all but $15,000 of that money. So for $15,000, we feed, I think the last count we had like 850 contractors there.
My gosh, yeah.
And we do it in tents. And it's in the early spring, and as you can see by this, you know, it's nothing fancy, and the grubbier the better. They like the tents, they like to go in the warehouse. It gets everyone to see our distribution center because, like I said, it's not open to the public. It gives us an appearance of being, you know, even bigger than we are, which is always good. So it's those kind of things. And then secondly, I think the educational stuff, we've really, in the last 18 to 24 months, tried to become an educational resource because with time and money and everything in this crunch, people don't have time or the inclination to be that educational resource. And as your pictures are showing, again, with these booths, we're the educational resource. We're demonstrating the products. We're showing it to them. And it's all stuff that we sell, and then, like I said, some new key items that we're trying to promote. And we always use this event to gauge what we're going to bring in based on how that approach is. And I took that directly from the hardware shows because they do a masterful job of that. You know, depending on how many orders they get on the new hammer is whether it's going to be in warehouse. We just took that and shrunk that philosophy down to our business.
So not only do you have the event, but it also helps you in your buying strategies, yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm getting my customer base to tell me in advance, will you buy this from me if I bring it in?
Tony, I have a couple questions real quick before we move on to maybe some of your other advertising and so on. One was directly in regard to your clam bake event. What kind of day and time do you hold these customer appreciation events? What time of year is it, and is it on a weekday or a Saturday? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think we've had the most success during a weekday, and it's in the spring, not in the summer, because you can run into the whole vacation things. This would normally be the last Thursday in April, and I like Thursdays for these kind of events because, you know, when you have food or if you have a contractor around, they don't want to be there on Fridays. Some of them sometimes, you know, in the summer they'll have a golf league or they play softball or whatever the case may be. In the spring, and you're kind of ramping up. I've had it as early as the first week in April, and I've had it as late as like the last week in April. But building on that, you know, it's a New Year frenzy. We've had things in March for educational. We actually have 3 events scheduled for this March, 3 Fridays in a row, and that's a luncheon, a breakfast to luncheon seminar, and that's during the week has been my favorite with the professionals. When you want to do in-store DIY stuff, you can do it on Saturdays, and we've done some of that as well. We've done some night faux painting seminars and how to prep your wall seminars and that kind of stuff with homeowners on Saturdays and sometimes at nights. This year will be an interesting year. We took this idea from one of our vendors. We have the first year where we have actually a Christmas party, a Christmas tool party for women only. And we're closing the stores, and it will be closing the stores early. It will be a 3 to 7 o'clock event, and it will be for women only, and they'll have their husband's shopping list, and we're almost keeping a gift registry of what that is for. So I'll let you know how that turns out as well.
Sounds great. One more question, which kind of leads into the other advertising and a little bit of a comment you made about technology. Have you guys have you changed how you advertise to your local community and contractors again throughout the economic period? And another point is, have you begun using any kind of the social networking tools like Facebook or Twitter to reach out?
Very interesting. You bring up those 2 points. One, yes. I mean, I would encourage anybody that is using Yellow Pages I would challenge you all, if you're using Yellow Pages, whatever you budget for Yellow Pages, cut it in half. And then next year, cut it in half again. Because Yellow Pages is dead. I've found that it's dead. And with technology and where you're going, like you said, with Facebook and some of the social networking devices, I don't use nobody. How old am I? I'm 41. There are nobody my generation or younger that is using that. I can Google on my phone if I want an address of something. I can Google anything on my laptop, but with smartphones, the phone book is a thing of the past. So what we've done is we've taken that money, rather than just not spend it, we've done a lot more of the direct mail flyers, direct mail, and our customer notification. We've really put a push on having our own database and sending direct mail and email to our own customers. And then when it comes to the social networking, I have an outside sales guy that is got his own Facebook page, and he puts on his Facebook pages all the jobs that he's done. So think about this, and I just thought this was absolutely brilliant when he came up with this. He said, when anyone says to me, hey, you're young, have you done this job before? You're not the, 60-year-old veteran, tried and true guy. He's like, yeah, you're right. I just say, hey, here's my Facebook page. At the convenience of your own time and in your comfort of your own home, check out every job I've ever done. And it's all on his Facebook page, so that it instills confidence and credibility without him saying, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Because people might think he's a liar or he's full of it or whatever the case may be. It's right there in black and white. And then secondly, on our kitchen designers, we have outside kitchen designers. I've set up my kitchen designer. I've got 2 of them now with mobile showrooms. For the price of a nice van, a large van, but a nice van, I've got them all set up with all the samples. I've got them set up with their laptops, portable printers, a generator. They can go to the job site. They can go to the customer's home. It's closed on their selling cycle. Their selling cycle is a lot less. They don't have to say, oh, well, now that I know what you want, I'll input your design into the CAD program or the 2020, and then I'll get back with you. No. Boom. While he's got them there, he's got the quote in their hands. They can see with technology today, 17-inch color screen on a laptop's fantastic. Color portable printer, prints out the layout right there. It's the same philosophy that like Anderson Renewal Windows has. They're marketing geniuses, and they get inside of the house and they sell. And that's where we're taking a lot of our marketing dollars. So I'll get off my soapbox, but Full Pages is dead.
Sounds good. Jesse, did you have any other questions?
Well, just to kind of wrap it up, where do you see the lumber and building material business in, say, 5 years, or what's the future? Kind of your take on it.
I would say more of kind of what we started talking about just now, the social networking. The way you go to market is going to be completely different. You're going to be that database, the internet, the activity there. People are going to have channels in which they trust, whether it is their Facebook contacts or they've been accepted as a friend or an environment that they have. That is what you're going to need to be advertising in, being in. I think you need to be. There has been a nice resurgence in loyalty to your community. I think that when people said that the independent retail hardware and lumberyard dealers were dead forever with the whole Lowe's thing and Home Depot, I think that's wrong. The service that we can provide and the knowledge is second to none. I think that a lot of those areas, if you're entrenched in your community, you become that resource. But again, I also encourage everyone that's listening that you need to be involved with the professional, because the professionals that are left are going to emerge from this bigger than they were before, because there's just less people around.
Great.
Very good. Well, that's all I had. And Tony, I
well,
want to thank. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, lastly, I just wanted to cover a couple housekeeping things, and if anybody, while I'm going over the housekeeping things, if any of the attendees have any further questions that we could cover, please don't forget that down in the lower right-hand corner there's a Q&A box, and you can enter anything in there. But if there are no further questions, I just wanted to let everybody know that this is the second webinar in the NRHA series for the year, and we have a total of 12 planned throughout the course of the year, and that to see a full list and register for webinars in the future, you will want to go to www.nrha.org. And also, the webinar that you attended today, if you came in late or you missed any part of it, or you would like to share it with others in your company, in about 2 weeks, it will be posted on the same website, www.nrha.org, and that is a full recording of the entire webinar with the slides and the audio. And there is also a library of all the past webinars that we have done through NRHA, and I would encourage you to download those and take a look at any that might be of interest to you.
Thank you, Dan, and that's pretty much what I was going to say. So thank you for joining us, everyone who did. Thank you, especially Tony, for being with us today and for all of your comments. I think they were very helpful.
No, thank you guys, and appreciate everything you do for the association.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And this will conclude our webinar on how to sell lumber and building materials. Thank you all, and I encourage you to look for further webinars down the road and join us for those. Have a great day.